We are at 12 o'clock, so thank you everyone for joining us today on the Equestrian Canada National Equine Disease and Welfare Surveillance Call. This is a call that is arranged by the Health and Welfare Committee of Equestrian Canada every month to update everyone on different disease surveillance and welfare initiatives going on around the country. We did take a short break over the summer. As we all know, in the equine world, summer is our busiest time, so we are resuming again to our normal schedule for the fall and winter season. Today we have a wonderful lineup of speakers. First up, we have Dr. Sara Taylor from the Veterinary Program Specialist of Internal Affairs Branch at the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and she will be providing us an update of Canadian import impacts in relation to Vesicular stomatitis in the United States. So with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Taylor.
Perfect. Thank you. As I'm sure you're all aware, the U.S. has been having an ongoing outbreak of vesicular stomatitis. To date, they've had 7 states that have been affected. Currently, 6 of those are on the current list of affected states. So that's Colorado, Nebraska, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. And so as of September 3rd, Oklahoma was released from the list of affected states. So Oklahoma is back to being considered free of VS. With the outbreak of VS in the U.S., there are additional requirements and import restrictions that apply to U.S. and Canadian horses returning from the U.S. or going down to the U.S. And they are the list of requirements that are in place and that tend to go in place whenever we do have these outbreaks come up. But essentially, as a summary or reminder, the requirement is that susceptible species, so horses, ruminants, swine, have to have resided in a non-VS affected state for 21 days before they can return to Canada. So if a horse is in a state that becomes affected with VS, they would have to move to a non-affected state before being able to enter Canada. And the same would be true for Canadian horses that travel down to the U.S. For competition or for pleasure riding. If that state that they are in becomes affected with VS, they would have to move outside the state to a non-affected state for 21 days, become certified by USDA to be able to return. So that's most of what I have. It's the outbreak seems to be, knock on wood, somewhat of a sort of on the decline, even though some of the currently affected states are still reporting new cases. We haven't added any new affected states in a little while, so hopefully that's good news, and the outbreak will slowly resolve, and we'll be able to keep removing states.
Are there any questions for Dr. Taylor at this time? We do like to hold off questions till the end, but if we do have anyone on the line who doesn't think they can make it till the end, it's *6 to unmute yourself, and just maybe do a brief introduction of who you are and address your question.
Hi, Christy. This is Wayne Burwash. One question:
Hi, Wayne.
If a person is to drive through a state hauling horses, Canadian horses down, for instance, if we drove from Alberta down to Nevada but drove through Utah, does that restrict us if you don't stop in Utah or unload? Or the same would apply, say, going to Oklahoma, if you drove through Colorado without stopping but got into Oklahoma, what is the restrictions on coming back?
That's a great question. So when transiting a VS affected state, the recommendation would be that whenever possible, to avoid doing so, but realizing that given where some of these states are located, the size of the states, and humane transport restrictions in wanting to get these horses to where they need to be as soon as possible. We do have we do have requirements for when horses need to transit affected states. So when that happens, when you arrive at the port of entry, declaring that you've had to transit through a state that's been affected by VS, and there is a supplementary declaration form that gets completed with CFIA at the port of entry, and essentially the shipper owner completing that supplementary declaration is saying that while they've transited through the affected state, they haven't unloaded any animals off the shipment, they haven't added any animals, and the shipment didn't enter a premises where any susceptible species have been kept, and so they need to sign that, and it gets countersigned by CFIA.
Okay, Sarah, just to clear then, at the port of entry of the U.S. or port of entry to a given state?
That would be at the port of entry when they return to Canada. So interstate, the individual states might have their own requirements. So whenever you're moving horses through the U.S. and from state to state, the shipper owner needs to make sure they're aware of the various interstate requirements, because some of them do have either their own restrictions or testing requirements for transiting VS affected states. But for either U.S. horses or Canadian horses returning that have to transit an affected state, it's when they come to the Canadian border. If they've transited an affected state, they just need to complete a supplementary declaration that gets countersigned by CFIA.
Okay, that's great then. And would there need to be a vet inspection at that point too to make sure they have no vesicles?
Typically, if they haven't been offloaded, it's just to sign the declaration. If there was any concerns about their health, the inspector might make a decision at that time whether an inspection would be required. But if the shipment has only transited, they've originated from a non-affected state, an inspection is not required.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Sara Taylor. Next up, we have Megan Bergman, Executive Director of the National Farm Animal Health and Welfare Council, and she will be providing an update on all the great progress that's been made on the Canadian Animal Health Surveillance System and the Equine Network, as well as any other information about the National Farm Animal Health and Welfare Council.
So thanks, everyone, for your time today. As Christy mentioned, the Council has taken over some support and leadership with respect to the Canadian Animal Health Surveillance System, and certainly our Equine Network has been one that's been very active from the outset. So we had sent in an application to request project funding through the Canadian Animal Health Partnership Program, and we did get that approved, and the intent for that was really for us to be able to take a look at national reporting capacity with respect to animal diseases, including equine, and looking at how we can better report on disease information collection, collaborating closely with a lot of the networks that are already in operation across the country, whether it be swine or regional specific ones such as OHAN or RAZO. So that's something we're quite looking forward to, and it's also given us the opportunity to be able to move forward with hiring a coordinator for the Canadian Animal Health Surveillance Program. So that's actually being advertised as we speak, and we're hopeful that we're able to run a competition very quickly and have somebody in place to be able to give support to all of the great networks and the works that are underway within them. On the equine side, certainly I think you folks have already heard about the great work that's happened with respect to developing case definitions and being able to identify diseases of interest with respect to the equine network. And one of the things I think that we've heard pretty loud and clear is the importance of having better capacity with respect to reporting of diseases. So one of the things that the team was working on really actively was basically the equine disease reporting dashboard. So what we had developed working really closely with CFIA and the Equine Network was a tool now that can report all of the immediately notifiable diseases that are being reported across the country. It'll be interactive, so you have the capacity to be able to search by disease, by province. And it also has mapping overlaid so that you can see roughly, not specifically where the exact location is, because certainly we don't want to be able to identify a premise. And it also has dots that are indicated on the map that are larger in size if you have an increased or larger number of cases that have been identified. And that's all based also with information that we've collected from farms that are reported through the census system. So it's not perfect because the census is certainly starting to get a little bit out of date, but it will continue to be updated as we get new information. And then the information that we have with respect to diseases is coming in through CFIA and the immediately notifiable reporting system. So it's quite accurate. With respect to prevalence, it won't, of course, be perfect because we don't have the negative results. We just have the positive, but it certainly is useful to, I think, the equine world to be able to see where we may be seeing pockets of disease issues occurring, and also kind of having more kind of real-time, up-to-date information available. We are working really closely with CFI right now as well to be able to get access to all of the EIA reporting to build that into this as well. And of course, our long-term vision will be able to look at trying to build in a system with all of those important diseases that have been identified by the network that are not necessarily reportable, but certainly of interest to the equine world. So that's kind of our long-term vision. We're hoping to have this dashboard up for folks to be able to see within the next very short while, hopefully the next few weeks. But Christy has a screenshot of it if folks would like to kind of get an example of what it looks like and a feel for it. She'd be happy to send it out to anyone who would like to see what it looks like. So I think that's going to be a really exciting and useful tool for folks going forward. Just when we have so much horse movement going on around the world and around the country, it's nice to be able to have an idea of what your potential disease risks might be. And then certainly from a council standpoint, we've been pretty busy working on things like developing our governance structure and bylaws. And part of the reason we've done that is because we're looking for the opportunity to be able to incorporate or engage with other partners such as the National Farm Animal Care Council so that we can facilitate them having the opportunity to be within the council as a separate division. So we have a members meeting coming up in the next week or couple of weeks so that we can get our bylaws updated and allow us to begin to build stronger partnerships with different organizations that are kind of working within that animal health and welfare sphere and start to align ourselves a little bit more closely. So we're quite looking forward to that. And then certainly one of the activities that have been keeping us quite busy is Animal Health Canada. And so Animal Health Canada is an initiative that started actually really industry-driven with a desire to see an opportunity for more collaborative partnership approaches to animal health emergency management in the country. So a working group was put together with industry and government partners to be able to take a look at where are our current gaps in the animal health system in Canada at the moment, where are the things that are going well, and so where are some opportunities for us to take advantage and improve things. And within that, taking an evaluation approach to how can we enhance our governance model here in Canada so that we do have a better shared partnership with respect to managing disease events. So both industry and government players can all be at the table when it comes to kind of decision-making and management approaches. That one's been quite an active one. We should be having information coming on that in the next, I'd say, month or so. So we'll be happy to share any information that we have ready to go as soon as it's finalized and ready for sharing. And I think, Chrissy, that's probably the big thing that we're working on right now. So happy to take any questions or certainly can stay on the line for after the end of the call as well.
So next up, we have Nikki from the Horse Welfare Alliance of Canada, and she'll be providing an update on their work on the development of an online equine code of practice training tool.
Thank you for allowing me this time to give you an update on our project. This project is led by the Horse Welfare Alliance of Canada, and the goal is to provide awareness of the welfare and health standards as defined in the Code of Practice. The Code of Practice was, of course, developed by the National Farm Animal Care Council, NFAC. The project is moving along nicely. We've worked through our scripts, so for each of the 10 sections of the code, we have written out the script. And we've also done biosecurity and emergency management, and we're going to be also offering some information on an animal care assessment program just to start getting people thinking about the words like what is an animal care assessment? What will that look like in the equine industry? So we are working on that. We've done a lot of photography and video shoots in the Western Canada, and so now we're working on going into PEI, Ontario, to get some footage. So we want it to be representative of all of Canada. So we're just going to be going to the east and working on some film and video from there as well. We have a pilot that has been reviewed by our review committee of Section 1 of the code, which is the duty of care. And we are working on a website that will showcase all of the resources as well. So work is ongoing for the other 9 sections of the code, plus the biosecurity and the emergency management module. We're also developing other resources, print and online materials, checklists, that kind of stuff that people can use to go through so they can see that they understand the section. Then we have self-evaluation checklists that will be done and a pocket guide. The system is going to be set up so that you go through the 10 modules, and as you come to the end of the module, it's a video which has graphics and everything in it. Then you'll have like 3 or 4 questions that you'll be able to answer, and then when you successfully answer them, you can go to the next section and then work your way through. Once you have the 10, or once that participant has the 10 sections done, then they have the option to print off a certification of completion that they've gone through this code of practice training. Then, of course, they can use the checklist and whatnot whenever they need to. Also, the system will be set up so that if someone wants to go in and just learn about housing and shelter, they can go into that section. They don't need to do the entire code of practice if they choose. The system will be free. Anyone will be able to go in and complete the program. They just need to register, and we just want them to register so we can see who's going through. And if they have any problems or if we have any updates to the program, they can contact us and we can connect with them. And the next phase of the project is going to be just getting out in the community and talking about the resources that we have developed here. So that we're going to be going to industry meetings and equine events throughout the country, just showing them the code, talking to them, getting an awareness of who's aware of the code, how they're using it, if there's any problems with the code. Again, introducing the idea of the animal care assessment program, which Equestrian Canada will be developing in the next couple of years. But we just want them to start talking about that. And so we're working on some communication pieces as well so that we can hand out information to the public and they can know where to find our resources. And we want anyone that has an interest for equine to come in and use this program. So it could be somebody that their child is bugging them, they want a horse, and they need to understand, what this all involves. We encourage them to go through so they can see, the whole what they're going to come into once they purchase that horse or lease a horse. Right down to somebody who has a horse already and may just want to get educated on what the code is about. So I think that's about all I have. So I don't know, are you doing questions now, Christy, or at the end?
Yeah, sure. I will just add on, as Nikki said, Equestrian Canada is in the final stages of establishing some funding from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada to develop an animal care assessment program that will be based on the code of practice. The training and the resources that Nikki had mentioned would be serve as one of potential prerequisites for moving ahead with being certified on an animal care assessment program. So you would be required to demonstrate that you've taken training on the code of practice, and this would be one of the methods that you could do so. So this is all very exciting for the code of practice as well as having an animal care assessment framework. So if there are any questions, we can take them now. One question I do have, Nikki, which I know this may not be settled at this point, but what would be the cost associated with taking the training?
The training is going to be free. There is no cost to take it. So anyone can take it at any time. Yeah.
Excellent.
And
okay.
There's no age restrictions or anything like that.
Do we have somebody from the Ontario Animal Health Network available on the call to provide an update about equine disease in Ontario?
Yep, Allison's here.
Hi, Allison.
Hi.
Just introducing yourself, and then the floor is yours.
Yep, I'm Dr. Allison Moore. I'm a co-lead for the Ontario Animal Health Network, and I am also a lead veterinarian with the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs. So, thanks for having us on. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of sort of Owen, our Ontario Animal Health Network report from Q2, which was April, May, and June, and then a little bit of some stuff that's happening now. So one of the things that we did for this quarter, or Q2 and Q1 of this year, was redesigned the survey a little bit. So we wanted to make it a little bit more open. So instead of leading that with sort of questions about specific diseases, sort of said, what have you seen that's increased or decreased or new and you don't have a diagnosis for? So I'll just focus on that because there was a couple of interesting situations that went undiagnosed. And so we had one clinic that had a farm with horses with fevers and swollen limbs and some that foundered. There was about 5 of 60 that were affected, and all of those that were affected had recently started a new load of hay. A toxin weed was suspected, and I think Horiolisum was on the top of the list, but nothing was proven at that time. But it's always a good idea when we have these kind of surveys to get this kind of information in so that if we had more than one clinic reporting, then we could start an investigation or help with an investigation. We also had another farm in the eastern part of the province that had 6 horses with severe bilateral conjunctivitis. So the eyes swelled and there was a lot of discharge. They responded to treatment very rapidly and were back to normal within 48 hours. Still don't know what that was. We assume it was some kind of probably aerosol irritant. But again, if we had more in an area that we're reporting, then we could assist with an investigation. So those were kind of interesting things. Another advantage of doing this kind of network analysis on a quarterly basis is we get an idea of what trends are occurring in diseases. So Potomac horse fever is a fairly common disease out in the eastern part of the province. It's endemic out there. It was been a pretty quiet year this year and last year, and there's feeling that it comes on a 3-year cycle. So we're anticipating it might be a bit worse next year. So we'll see if that comes to fruition or not. Another thing that we presented in this was the veterinarian's report. So veterinarians can access it on on.ca when they log in. Was a case report on a EHV1 abortion at a breeding facility. This was a pretty significant abortion outbreak. There were 9 of 24 mares that aborted, and then 2 young foals that also died during this time. Of interest were that 11 horses came from out of province onto this farm. So there was a lot of issues regarding biosecurity, which these concerns are not really unusual to a lot of the breeding farms that we deal with. So just to summarize some of the take-home lessons that were learned from this particular outbreak, one of the main ones was the time that the mares shed the virus after they aborted. Some of the mares shed that virus for up to 74 days post-abortion, which is pretty significant, particularly if mares need to leave to be rebred from the farm. It really will disrupt an entire breeding operation. The other thing was dealing with biosecurity. So in terms of the barn design, the floors were dirt, so very difficult to disinfect. The flow of horses came through one common area, which was difficult to manage. The mares were sort of mixed when they came in, and they came into the farm at different times, and they were mixed with the resident mares. So most of them were obviously exposed to the virus, so that was another challenge. They had limited staff to try and dedicate staff to certain areas of the barn. And there was no isolation area or quarantine area for new horses coming in, which is also fairly typical around here. One of the other things that occurred during this time, so most of the abortions happened running from February 16th to March 10th. So the mares that foaled before and after had healthy foals. So during that particular time, and this is purely speculation, not really scientific per se, but there was some unusual weather during that time. There was a period of the coolest temperatures of the season just prior to that abortion storm, and a lot of snow on the ground, which suggested that the turnout would have been reduced. The mares weren't moving. And there was a low pressure cell that occurred 2 to 3 weeks, as well as right before the abortion. And in humans, so this again just speculation, low pressure cells have been linked to premature placental separation in people. So it was just kind of an interesting thing to see, why. I mean, it was clearly a mixture of a bunch of events, but interesting nonetheless. So going on to more recent things, in Ontario, we've had 5 EEE cases so far in the season. One of the sort of interesting takeaways from that is we've had 3 of those cases are in Northern Ontario, which has been unusual. We haven't had cases that north for quite a while, so we have had 1 horse in the district of Thunder Bay and 2 in the greater Sudbury area. And it's very hard to predict where EEE is going to occur. Last year, we had 13 horse deaths related to EEE in Haldimand County, which is near Niagara. Hadn't had a positive out of that area for many years either. So really what we just continue to stress is vaccinate your horses is the best way to protect them, because it is difficult to predict. The other issue, well, it's not really an issue, but, well, it is an issue, but is the strangles in the province. We have strangles every year. This year, a couple of the fall fairs did cancel their equine event because of strangles risk in the area, and it's created quite a bit of a discussion. Strangles is not regulated by the province, so it is a little hard to know what cases are out there. The Ontario Animal Health Network does get positive test results, and we can say based on the testing that's done, so that's a very biased population, but the tests that are done that are positive, we've had no more positive test results than we've had in previous years, so really no indication of an outbreak per se. We also talk to veterinarians through listservs, et cetera, and we know that there's little pockets of it, but again, nothing that suggests that strangles is taking over the province. So we're trying to get people to just use common sense biosecurity when they go to the fairs. We've talked to some fair organizers about biosecurity. So that's something that'll come up probably every year as we continue to have the disease around. And then one other thing I wanted to mention, the Owen Equine Network has developed a website called researchonequine.ca. And it was developed to help increase research awareness and to connect researchers from academia and industry and government all around Ontario with the goal of improving the lives of equines. So it's really a networking site. You can go on it and look for research that's being done in different areas. And the latest publications will be visible there, and you can find out where the equine researchers are located in the province. And that's about it.
Okay, thank you very much, Allison. It's very exciting to hear about that research website. That will be very helpful for everyone. Are there any questions for Allison or for any of the speakers at this time? If so, just press *6 to unmute yourself. Okay, well, thank you very much to all our speakers today. They were very informative presentations. If anyone does have anything that they would like to bring forward on the October call, please just email me at khouse@equestrian.ca, as well as if you would like to see a screenshot of what the Equine Network dashboard does look like, as Megan mentioned, I'd be happy to send that along. Additionally, keep an eye on your mailboxes this coming Friday or Monday. There should be a consultation document coming out in regards to what a potential equine identification program could look like. EC would like to seek your feedback on that. As well, we will be arranging a time on one of our calls to have this discussion ahead of the consultation end. So please let me know by email your feedback as soon as you receive the document or when you have a chance to speak with your organization. Other than that, thank you very much for joining us today, and we will